is in the crosshairs. The gates of hell have opened. Wow, those stargates really take a toll on you. Hi, I'm Steve Quayle. I'm excited to share with you and ask you to come along on a journey that we're going to take you back in time, but we're going to launch you into the future. We're talking about three terms primarily: a stargate, a wormhole, and a portal. We'll show you how all of the ancient architecture that's much larger than anything we even have today, and how it's all related to the return of the aliens. Every place we go and everyone we talk to tells a common thread, tells a common story of their ancestors. This is probably one of the most exciting things that I've ever seen brought together. I want you to share our excitement, because at this point, no one's ever brought this together in this way, drawing so many different events and situations to give you a common understanding why all the ancient civilizations built archaeological sites and built astronomical sites, all looking to the stars, because they were aware that their origins came from the stars, and they're looking for, in essence, the star people to come back. So sit back and enjoy our presentation. You'll learn how the ancient history that we've documented will launch you into a future and tomorrow's headlines.
What you are about to witness is not science fiction, and this is not just some story or entertainment. This is real life, and it's happening every day all over the planet.
Earth is in the crosshairs.
Computer scientist and UFO researcher Jacques Vallée once said, "If they are not an advanced race from the future, are we dealing instead with a parallel universe? Another dimension where there are other human races living and where we may go at our expense, never to return to the present. From that mysterious universe, are higher beings projecting objects that can materialize and dematerialize at will? Are UFOs windows rather than objects?" Writer John A. Keel once said, "The UFOs do not seem to exist as tangible, manufactured objects. They do not conform to the accepted natural laws of our environment. They seem to be nothing more than transmogrifications, tailoring themselves to our ability to understand. The thousands of contacts with the entities indicates that they are liars and put-on artists. The UFO manifestations seem to be, by and large, merely minor variations of the age-old demonological phenomenon."
Throughout the world, people are literally, with their cell phone cameras and sometimes better cameras, are filming strange aerial phenomena in the skies. With so many people seeing phenomena in the sky, literally holes opening up in the sky and craft coming in or going out, now this phenomenon is being recorded on a massive scale worldwide. And it's literally because the stargates are open, the portals are open. Do you understand what time it is? It's the end of the age.
First theorized by Albert Einstein himself, a wormhole is known as an Einstein-Rosen bridge. It connects two specific areas in the universe over vast distances and reduces the time needed to travel. Think of it like a tunnel with specific entrance and exit points. Wormholes appear to be natural phenomena and are different from stargates and portals and are not transportable. A stargate connects two different physical points in the universe, such as from Earth to Mars, or even from one place on Earth to another place on Earth. These appear to be based upon technology and can be repositioned. A portal, like a stargate, appears to be based upon technology and can also be repositioned. However, a portal also leads to different dimensions, and almost always, in our investigations at Gen 6, portals appear to lead to the spirit realm, or spirit world.
We're talking about war from that dimension coming into our dimension. So what is important for everyone to understand is that stargates and portals are actively being articulated, opened, and closed as we speak. The gates of hell have opened. Dr. Travis Taylor, double PhDs, astrophysicist. He's designing the experiments over Skinwalker Ranch. Skinwalker Ranch is in northern Utah, which is one of the most unusually supernatural active areas in the entire United States. He's the only one that has ever modeled a wormhole using the most advanced scientific means and methodology of anybody on planet Earth.
I was the chief scientist of the OD&I, Office of Director of National Intelligence, UAP Task Force, that was mandated by Congress in 2019 through 2022.
It's a privilege to be here with you today to address your questions regarding unidentified aerial phenomenon, or UAP. What are UAP? Put simply, UAP are airborne objects that, when encountered, cannot be immediately identified.
I have like 35 years of experience in the intelligence community, the Defense Department. We're doing NASA projects, aerospace defense, with lasers, rockets, spacecraft, high-tech concepts across the board, you name it.
Dr. Taylor is not just some theoretical physicist with no real-life experience. He is somebody that people go to for answers on what's happening on, in, and around planet Earth.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
You know, I'm one of the few people who's written a textbook on how we would defend the planet if we were invaded by aliens, and did it from a serious scientific and strategic way. I started building radio telescopes when I was 16 years old and looking at the skies with scientific instruments my entire life. And, you know, I went to school. I'm still in school. I've been in school for 30-something years and worked on defense programs, intelligence community programs, NASA programs, and volunteered for every dangerous intelligence community job I could do, just to try and see what more I could find out, and if there was something behind the door. When I was 16 years old, I had just won the Alabama State Science Paper Competition down in Montgomery. And they had a really famous scientist, I don't even remember the guy's name now. He went through this talk and started saying, you know, if we're going to space, we're not going to do it like they're showing in Star Trek with warp drive. That's thousands of years beyond what we can do, or I'm not going to see it in my lifetime. So now, looking at what we're doing and things that have come to light and what we're doing at Skinwalker Ranch, you know, we were thinking, or even I was thinking of the universe as we're hundreds of years from inventing the technology that will enable us to bend space and time to do faster than light work. But I told myself when I was 17 that I wasn't going to quit till we figured it out. And I always been upset that humans don't live long enough to get to see the fruits of their labor, so to speak.
Too many people call this type of thing being an experiencer or experiencing things. Well, I'm more than just an experiencer. I'm a knower. And what I mean by that is that at Skinwalker Ranch, we have had so many things happen, so many different times, and we have documented it with multiple sensors, multiple scientific instruments that are calibrated, multiple witnesses, and so we know that there is a phenomena that's real there. What the phenomena is, now I have no idea. And that's the difference in just saying you're an experiencer and maybe you saw a UFO, maybe you saw a paranormal event or whatever this, you know, the thing is.
And while Dr. Taylor's analytic methodology appears to be providing modern-day scientific answers to the strange phenomena on Earth and throughout our skies, one expert has gleaned potential explanations to these oddities by looking at Earth's ancient past. William Henry is an investigative mythologist, author, and researcher, and is also a frequent guest on the History Channel's Ancient Aliens. William has been to Egypt a whopping 26 times. He is intimately familiar with the Egyptians' ancestors' attempts to ascend using stargates, and has agreed to share his expertise on these issues with Gen 6 Productions.
My original research in stargates and wormholes began in 1990. I started reading the works of Zecharia Sitchin, and he proposed or would show in his works images of Anunnaki spaceships. But accompanying all of those images, I started to notice, were all of these images of the Anunnaki not traveling in rocket ships, but stepping through portals or gateways. Well, maybe what's happening here is the Anunnaki were traveling through stargates and wormholes. And when we look at this imagery, it's very clear that they were interested in portals and gateways, stargates. So in 1991, I had just spent about a year or so studying the Anunnaki. And this is, of course, when the Gulf War started. I was dumbfounded, astounded, when one of the announcers proclaimed that Saddam Hussein, who we were prosecuting during that war, believed that he was the reincarnation of the biblical king Nebuchadnezzar, and that he had spent $500 million in the 1980s rebuilding Babylon in fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Now, with that in mind, I'm pulling on this thread of Nebuchadnezzar and this understanding among the Iraqi people that Saddam Hussein believed himself to be the reincarnation of this biblical king. So I started following the art newspapers throughout the 1990s. And we started to see articles in the art world where they said, look, these UN weapons inspectors that everybody heard about on the news were going into Iraq, and they were coming out with illegal artifacts that they were selling on the black market. I learned that Saddam Hussein had a deep interest in ancient Sumerian history, the Anunnaki. He was assembling a massive collection of ancient Sumerian or Anunnaki artifacts that he had put into the Iraqi National Museum, and he intended for the whole world to see. And I went on record to say that I believe we would be in Iraq within 6 months. Well, it wasn't 6 months, it was 2 years. It took us 2 years to go into Baghdad, and the very first thing that we did was we went into the Iraqi National Museum and claimed all of these artifacts that Saddam had been collecting. Many of those artifacts, although I haven't seen them personally, but I'm absolutely convinced had to do with the Anunnaki Stargate technology.
This is what it's like on the receiving end.
Astonishingly, William Henry looked like a prophet as President George W. Bush launched the second Gulf War in 2003.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war.
What if these ancient texts are in fact historical recollections of what happened on this planet long ago? It's important for us to pay attention to this, because in numerous instances where this technology is used, there is, let's just put it mildly, interference from celestial beings. There are wars, there are prohibitions against humanity acquiring this technology, and yet we pursue it in our world. I've been to Egypt 26 times, beginning in 2003 on my first visit, and I was always intrigued by the Stargate imagery. Back in the late 90s, I had seen a photo that portrayed, that is on the ceiling of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. And it portrays a Ptolemaic king, a human king, one of the successors of Alexander the Great, on what the ancient Egyptians called the Ark of the Millions of Years, or the Ship of Eternity. And the instant I looked at this U shape of the Ark of the Millions of Years, I recognized that this is exactly the way modern science portrays a wormhole. So all throughout Egypt, from north to south, you find constant references to portals, gateways, stargates in our contemporary vernacular, as well as a technology for accessing or opening those gateways. I went to Skinwalker Ranch in September of 2023. Dr. Travis Taylor and I have had long discussions about the scenario there, what's possibly going on, and perhaps even the possibility that there's an Egyptian connection with the technology that is presumed to be concealed or cloaked there at Skinwalker Ranch. A hypothesis, if you will, that it's possible that this ancient Egyptian technology could be at Skinwalker Ranch, comes from a nearby petroglyph that shows a figure. It's a Ute petroglyph at McKee Springs. It shows a horned or rayed figure standing beside what is called by anthropologists or archaeologists who have investigated the symbolism a bloody head. It's a ringer for the head of Osiris that we see on the temple walls in ancient Egypt. Beside this horned or rayed figure is a symbol that is unanimously understood as a portal or a gateway into another realm. It's a concentric rings symbol that is accepted as a portal or gateway, and there's another figure standing beside it that holds in his hand a similar diagram to what they're calling the bloody head. I don't think it's a bloody head. I think it's the head of Osiris, and it suggests the possibility that that technology was brought to Utah somehow, or for some reason, some unknown reason.
Could there really be a connection between ancient Egyptian Stargate technologies and Skinwalker Ranch? Furthermore, are various ancient technologies, like that of the Sumerians, connected to other ancient cultures? And are there other ancient cultures that possess technologies far more advanced from what modern-day science has achieved? Where is the evidence?
It's also interesting to note that these gateways literally say Stargate on them in hieroglyphs.
What if we were to tell you that a Stargate portal was discovered in the 1920s, and for almost 100 years, the search has been on for technology that could change the course of human history?
There is a mysterious circle in Portugal from the Bronze Age that some believe was used as a teleportation portal, or a Stargate. The circular structure goes back 4,500 years and was used in ancient ritual ceremonies.
These are only a sampling of the many ancient examples of Stargate technology from all around Earth. With so many of these artifacts uncovered, one must ask, who put them here and when?
Are they mystical portals, like for spiritual purposes? Are they actual portals to other places or other dimensions? I don't know the answer to that yet, but we are going to find out if we continue to do experiments, and if we don't accept that these things are maybe religious or metaphysical in nature, and we shouldn't be studying them in science. Well, the definition of science is to study and learn everything about everything in the universe. And so there's no such thing as fringe. The scientific method says to do your homework, study all about a subject that you want to investigate, then form a hypothesis that you can test and verify or falsify.
Ancient technology, or the remnants of its use, is literally scattered all around the planet. Where did it come from? And what is its purpose? More importantly, who could have made it? And what was their level of technology and knowledge, given the precision needed to build these ancient megalithic structures and their endurance throughout millennia?
Something that we should be very aware of when we're speaking about ancient Stargate technology is that there's a very good possibility, perhaps even a certainty, that it existed in the time before Noah's flood. We know this, for example, by the Sumerian Kings list that has, or the Table of Kings as it's also referred to, where we're told that there were kings that reigned for thousands of years in the time before the flood, going back even 40,000 years.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm taking you today to probably one of the most unusual monoliths and megalithic areas in the state of Montana. And it's called the Playground of the Giants, where they have one of literally the biggest dolmens in the world. You're going to be seeing things that most people have never seen in their lives. We've taken you to different places, from Europe to Peru to Bolivia, to some of the most ancient places known on the face of the earth, into the most prominent megalithic structures. For instance, Sacsayhuaman in Peru, one of the biggest megalithic structures in the world, and according to legend, one of the largest stargates in the world. and then to the Incan outpost of Ollantaytambo, where the Incas had their last stand against the Spaniards, and where one of the biggest bases that was left undone but carved on the side of a mountain was in the process of being carved when the Incan Empire fell. Going to Bolivia and Tiwanaku, and even going into the realm of Lake Titicaca, high in the Andes, the highest lake in the world, the ancients knew how to set them on magnetic ley lines, meaning if you draw straight lines either on the equator or from the North to South Pole, so many of these ancient and sacred sites all line up, first of all with the ley lines, and second of all with the constellations in the heavens. Obviously the Milky Way, for instance, the Zuni tribe in Arizona claims they're the children of the Milky Way. And they have a society called the Milky Way Society.
On the History Channel's Search for the Lost Giants, on the episode Chasing the Bones, host Jim Vieira explains ley lines. He says, quote, "The theory is that there's almost a worldwide grid that's like the human acupuncture system, and there are different sites built at hotspots that were there, and they are called ley lines, an electromagnetic line of force that creates a vortex." Jim isn't wrong. Many people believe that an ancient civilization or civilizations not only built the megalithic structures on Earth, but that those structures were part of a pre-Adamic energy grid. So sophisticated is the system that modern-day mainstream science cannot even fathom its existence. Those structures and that grid were placed by the ancients on what are called ley lines.
If you draw a line from where we will be showing you all the way down to the tip of South America, it intersects with some of the most famous ancient landmarks of prehistoric history and what are known as megaliths. Just because people don't understand something doesn't mean it's not true. So sit back with us in the cockpit and enjoy some amazing sights as we're over the playground of the giants.
One of the most powerful ancient artifacts is the pyramid system that we find worldwide. When people think of pyramids, they typically think of Egypt. They don't think of the number of pyramids that are in China, the pyramids in the Yucatan, the mounds of America. What we have discovered is that there was an ancient worldwide grid system of these temples and pyramid complexes built on nodal points within this worldwide web or grid of which was ultimately an energy system of some kind, perhaps even a communication system that has been thought for a long time now to be superimposed over the Earth itself. And that these various nodal points are entry points for cosmic energies coming from other star systems, making them stargates, as well as perhaps even travel to those star systems.
Job 22:14 King James Version. 14 Thick clouds are a covering to him, that he seeth not, and he walketh in the circuit of heaven. We will look at the word circuit. Circuit in Hebrew is chug. It means a circle, circuit. Compass. From chug comes chug. It means to describe a circle. From chug comes chagag. It means to move in a circle, to march in a sacred procession. The earth and celestial bodies reel to and fro. From chagag comes chaga. It means to revolve, fear, terror. This is describing the pathway of heaven as surrounding the earth. We will look into Psalms 19:6. The Hebrew word for circuit in Psalms 19:6 is tikupha. It means a revolution of the sun, course of time-lapse, circuit, come about, end. From tikupha comes nikaf. It means to strike with more or less violence, to knock together, surround or circulate. Compass, about, cut down, destroy, go round about, enclose, round. From nikaf comes nikpa. It means a rope, as encircling. This is talking about the magnetic grid as lines that encircle the earth and heaven. What the Hebrew word nikaf is telling us is truly amazing here. This is speaking of the circuit in which the sun goes that follows the circuit of heaven. But then it tells us that something is striking this pathway and to knock things together. And also to cut down and destroy. This is talking about the powers given to Satan to maintain and watch over the circuit of heaven as his duty God gave him before he fell. The word strike and knock together means the maintenance and building process of the circuit of heaven. Surround and circulate is telling us that Satan has the power to go where he wants by using this as a power given by God, which is why Satan is called the prince of the air. The words destroy and cut down is telling us how Satan loses his power in the air when the battle of Revelation happens and he is defeated and no longer holds power. Demonic activity and sacred spots is also connected to the circuit of heaven. Psalm 104:3 King James Version. 3 Who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariot, who walketh upon the wings of the wind. Walketh in Hebrew is halak. It means to walk, enter, follow, forth, forward, go, away, on, out, up and down, lead, march, walk to and fro to places. The Hebrew word here is telling us how the circuit of heaven is used. You enter, go forward, up and down, march and go to and fro to places and then away. Satan as the prince of the air uses the circuit of heaven to go to and fro throughout the earth as mentioned in Job 1:7. Satan only has power in the second for now until cast to earth when he is defeated in the battle of Revelation 12:7. 7 And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord, and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. In it means the circuit of heaven. Ephesians 2:2 King James Version is talking about Satan as the prince of the power of the air. 2 Wherein in time past ye walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. We will now look at what the pillars of heaven are in Hebrew. Pillars in Hebrew is amud. It means a column as standing, also a stand, platform, pillar, a piece. From amud comes amad. It means to stand, arise, continue, cease, dwell, leave, be over, raise up, remain, set. From amad comes amad. It means to shake, be at a stand. From amad comes omed. It means a spot as being fixed, place where stood upright. As we can see, this is all describing a pillar that is set upright and fixed in a spot. This is what holds the circuit of heaven. Job 9:6 King James Version 6 Which shaketh the earth out of her place, and the pillars thereof tremble. Job 26:11 King James Version 11 The pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his reproof. Clouds in Hebrew is a bit, means an envelope, darkness or density, cloud, thick, thicket, darkness or density, a scud cloud, also a copse clay. From up comes uwb. It means to be dense or dark, to be cloud cover with a cloud. From up comes ob. It means to cover, arch it, rave, thick. The word ob is connected to Job 26:11. 2 Chronicles 4:17 King James Version 17 In the plain of Jordan did the king cast them, in the clay ground between Sukkah and Zirdatha. The words darkness and density from the word of gave us a reference to 2 Chron 4:17. It says a clay ground, which is describing the pathway, the ground of the wings of the wind. The word of tells us shading the pillars with clouds. The word ob tells us that there's an arched rave that is being used to shade the pillars of heaven and to hold it in place. This is describing a roadway that is enveloped with clouds. This is the wings of the wind, also known as the pathway of the angels and the circuit of heaven.
Native American stories and accounts from other Aboriginal people throughout the world are replete with both ancient and modern tales of fantastic craft in the sky and strange visitors, their gods or spirit people from other dimensions. Just how did those beings get here? And is there more to this lore than meets the eye? And more to the point, is there a direct connection from these stories to stargates, portals, and wormholes?
The Native Americans out there, the Utes and the Navajos, and even before that, probably the Fremonts, or maybe even pre-Fremont, have petroglyphs of things that look like monsters. There's some look like gray aliens, as the lore goes. Some that I don't know what you would call them, coming out of spirals, coming out of waveforms that are drawn on the rocks, and there's always. It's really interesting. What led us to the drum experiment out there was that we found a petroglyph that shows a drum beat at a particular frequency, and there's a little wave pattern coming off the drum, and then you see this creature on the other side and a spiral thing that looks like a portal. So, you know, is it really a portal, a wormhole, a stargate, something out there? I don't know. Did the natives think they saw something like that? Maybe they did. Maybe it was some kind of more esoteric thing, like an attempt to communicate or go to the afterlife or the spirit realm or whatever it might be. But I've talked to many of the living natives out there in the various tribal elders and so on, and they believe that the caves there, you know, which we haven't found yet, but they believe there are caves there filled with portals to other universes and worlds and so on.
I'm very intrigued by the Native American stories, particularly the Southwest of America, and their understanding and acceptance of the idea of star brothers, star people, star walkers, beings that have the ability to manifest through portals and gateways, and the belief that these gateways actually exist.
Speaking in terms of an open door, a gate, or a portal, it is necessary for us to understand how important it is for them to connect everything that they do to the elements in order for them to be able to properly move and operate in the way that they seek to do. Every ancient culture and its people understood this, beginning with the Native Americans, who religiously and systematically aligned themselves in tune with the supernatural demonic forces that would operate and move through the rain and the sun dance, depending on what they were seeking from their desired cause and effect.
No longer are the terms stargates, portals, wormholes, and UFOs owned by science fiction Hollywood. These aberrations are now appearing in our skies and found on Earth, and people are beginning to take notice.
Stargates are the gateway or the doorway to the heavens.
Stargates.
Stargates.
From north to south, you find constant references to portals, gateways, stargates in our contemporary vernacular.
While we were in the desert Southwest, we met with some of the Native American elders. The elders told us how they activate their stargates and their portals. They didn't discuss wormholes as such, but they went into great detail about stargates and portals. And basically, they said three things activate them. The sound, meaning various sounds, symbols, and chants. In talking with Cliff Mahooty, the former Zuni elder who has passed away, it became obvious that he knew his history. He knew the ancient history of the desert Southwest, but he also knew the days that we would know are the days of old, the days even before the Genesis creation. And the most shocking thing that he would tell me and had told me about the stargates is how regularly they're opened by the Native American Giant Society.
Keshi, or greetings in Zuni. My name is Clifford Mahooty. I am a Zuni Pueblo elder, and I am here to talk to you about what our tribe and the legends of the giant people. When I was growing up, there are many things that we have within our history. One of the things that a lot of people do not talk about openly are some of the different types of people that we had encountered through our history.
What exactly are stargates, portals, and wormholes? Do they really exist? And if so, why should I care? Steve Quayle said, and I quote, "Stargates and portals are actively being articulated, open and closed as we speak." Is this a true statement? Is there evidence that the stargate, wormhole, and portal phenomenon is occurring in our physical realm? To give validity to Steve's premise, in addition to the numerous videos of people capturing the opening of portals and wormholes in the sky, there were two incidents this year from 2024 that stand out. On January 6th, 2024, a citywide 3 alert was issued to the Miami police to respond to a disturbance at the Miami Bayside Market Mall. The initial reports said that people were seeing 8-foot phase-shifting aliens walking through and in front of the mall. There were, at the time, several videos that captured the incident and were then posted on social media. Later, the police would report that a fight broke out between several teenagers at the mall, and that's why they dispatched over 100 police units. Those were the same police units that were caught on camera.
Now to our #1 trending story on CBSMiami.com.
It involves talk of alien sightings at Bayside Marketplace. On New Year's Day, there was a massive police response in downtown Miami.
So as we running, we look back and we notice some weird shapes taller than me. I'm 6'2", shadowy, dark, solid shapes, not human. I promise you, these is not human. I mean, it made the hair stand up on my skin.
So, what is more likely? That a well-run and organized police department dispatched over 100 units for 4 teenagers fighting? Or did something truly very strange happen at the mall, which so severely traumatized the public that the police had to have a massive response to whatever it was? Interestingly, all independent eyewitness reports of phase-shifting aliens from social media that could corroborate this story, which specifically described what they looked like, were later scrubbed from the internet. The question that John Q. Public should ask is why? And who had the power to erase numerous videos of the incident? The second incident in 2024 happened in a suburb of Las Vegas, Nevada. In news video, police officers were seen talking to residents of a local neighborhood when their body cams picked up a bright green light falling from the sky.
A light streak was seen in the sky, followed by people who called 911 saying they saw giant figures in their backyard. So what's going on?
It began with a mysterious fireball falling from the sky, caught on a cop's body cam. It landed with a crash.
Shortly after they're dispatched, police talk to residents who say that something fell from the sky and landed in their backyard. Then they say that there are 2 phase-shifting aliens in their backyard. Police go with them to investigate and find something very strange. The video also shows something unexplainable, and it shows the residents extremely agitated and fearful. Months later, a forensic investigation is done on the video footage, and it is found to be 100% credible.
I don't know. I'm so nervous right now. I have butterflies, bro. Everyone saw a shooting star, and these people say there's aliens in their backyard.
Scott Roeder is an internationally recognized evidence specialist and founder of the Evidence Room. You've analyzed the video in Las Vegas in that backyard. Edited, fake, what's your take on it?
No, there's no editing. That is an original video. We did a complete analysis of it, and we tried to debunk it to see if there was something that was added to the video.
The point is, these are only 2 examples of Steve Quayle's assertion that the interdimensional gates of hell have now opened. He contends that these types of incidences will increase exponentially, and people will not know how to handle it. After all, the Bible does talk about in Luke 21:26, people fainting from fear and the expectation of the things that are coming upon the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Steve's right. We are in that season, and the interdimensional gates of hell are open.
Well, stargates, portals, and wormholes, they connect the visible realm to the unseen realm. They connect the physical realm on terra firma, planet Earth, to the different stars, to the different planets, to the different legends, to the different myths of history. And that's what's so important about understanding stargates, portals, or wormholes. And in discussing stargates, the Native Americans refer to the star people. They came from the stars. Across the world, and especially throughout the United States, into South America, all over the world, especially in Romania and the Ural Mountains, there are vast underground tunnel systems that connect these stargates and portals, as well as alien bases.
What is a stargate? I define a stargate on 3 levels. A stargate is a connection between one star and another star, or a star system and another star system. A stargate is a place on Earth where the light or frequency or vibration of a particular star system is collected on Earth. This is why, for example, we build the 3 pyramids of Giza as mirror images of the 3 belt stars of Orion, or why temple complexes are aligned with the Pleiades star system. There's a belief that by creating a mirror image, you create create a conduit between that star system and the location on Earth. The third definition of a stargate is it's an actual interdimensional transportation device, a wormhole. So what we have here is a confluence between the term stargate and the word wormhole. Technically, a wormhole is a shortcut through space-time, and a stargate on Earth is a location where a wormhole is actually accessed or located.
Albert Einstein once said that quantum mechanics was spooky action at a distance. Indeed, quantum physics have been baffling scientists for decades, and yet the idea of extra dimensions other than our 3D world would explain so many perplexing questions. We are only just beginning to understand the idea of other dimensions, so it's a good thing we have a physicist like Dr. Taylor to explain it to us.
I'm convinced that a lot of these phenomena are quantum physical in nature. Consciousness is quantum physical in nature. Your brains work like a quantum computer, and reality is some superposition of all of us different quantum computers interacting with each other. Since quantum physics does happen across the universe instantaneously, it makes sense that things happening at Skinwalker Ranch might be connected to things happening, say, in Sedona or Denver, or pick your place where weird stuff is happening. They could all very well be connected. And here's the other thing. I'm talking right now at least, about the things in space. Quantum physics we know now is across time, instantaneously. And I don't mean into the future, I mean all of time. Your future does influence your past. Think about what I just said. So we don't know what these phenomena are, or when, or where they came from.
My name is Marcellus Medina. I'm from the Pueblo of Zia, which is located in New Mexico. The history or the legends within our Indian stories or Indian realm of being passed down from one grandfather to son to grandson. We have been told stargates are the gateway or the doorway to the heavens exists within our present day in the modern world. We do have openings that open up throughout the whole what we call Mother Earth. These openings are dimensional, what we call the four worlds or the fourth world that we're living in. There's different layers, different dimensions and different layers that are coming. There's a 5th, 6th, 7th, even all the way up to 20 dimensions. And I have gone through these stargates myself, and there are other individuals. These doorways are open up. It's not a direct doorway to the direct God, which everybody is searching. It's a process that we go through as Native Americans.
Is there really something to all these legends about portals? I mean, we've got a petroglyph 3/4 of a mile or less from this spot that we've had anthropologists tell us depict a portal in the sky. We have reports from people that go back tens of years, even hundreds of years, about portals opening up and things coming out of them. What we have is scientific data that is telling us there is some sort of strange phenomena that I don't think anybody's ever seen before or measured.
There is a convergence of events in our skies, on the Earth, and under our oceans that appear to be intersecting with ancient myths and legends. In addition, many Native American oral traditions are corroborated with 21st century Indian experiences.
There are some real highly technological events that occur. It's sort of like going into a different time zone, in a different dimension zone. And these were the ancient alien type. The aliens were actually here way long time ago, and they, in lieu of the aliens, they became the Kachina people. So the Kachina represent the aliens that used to come here, and they go through certain points on the planet. They call them portals, or Stargate became a phrase within the last 20, 30 years. But in those days, they say that they were in the underground systems, but they were directly from space. And the way I explained it in a technological way is that it's like a veil that's hanging there like a curtain. It is so thin that when you passed in there, you're in a different dimension. When you go into Indian country, there are so many different places, what they call sacred areas. The different Pueblo people, they have their own, if you want to call them stargates. That's where they go and they talk directly to the other beings from different...
2 Sam 22:10-12. 10 He bowed the heavens also, and came down, and darkness was under his feet. 11 And he rode upon a cherub, and did fly, and he was seen upon the wings of the wind. 12 And he made darkness pavilions round about him, dark waters, and thick clouds of the skies. PS 18:9-11. 9 He bowed the heavens also, and came down, and darkness was under his feet. 10 And he rode upon a cherub, and did fly. Yea, he did fly upon the wings of the wind. 11 He made darkness his secret place. His pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds of the skies. The Hebrew word nada for bowed means to stretch out or thrust down into. It has the idea also of parting a way to enter through. It can be perceived as simply a portal or a bending of space. When accompanied with the idea of darkness under his feet, the Hebrew, ar uphel, means a dark cloud or dense darkness, can allude to a black hole, which is dense and dark. Dark clouds combined with the comment under his feet is describing a pathway or road, something to be traveled upon. A dark cloud carries water, and that is something in transition. It is moving as a path or roadway under God's feet. Dark clouds or rain clouds were the only thing that made sense at the time. The original language, however, means more of a stream. The illusion as a stream or something very dense and dark that is used as a pathway or road from a higher realm into a lower one also has the connotation as being a wraparound or circular covering. We would today call this a wormhole or a jet stream. The rest of these words, when considering the other variations, confirms this train of thought. 2 Samuel 22 verse 12 has key words: darkness, pavilions, round about him, dark waters, and thick clouds could be telling us much more if we bring out the richness of the full intended meanings. These meaning, however, could only be brought out as we began to understand this kind of physics.
It is God who decided to reveal himself as a Shekinah glory from a temporary enclosure. This cloud is used while in transition as a binding. What is this binding? It is the bridging together of the two dimensions. In this sense it is like a portal or opening for his presence to slip into without being a part of this dimension. This covering or cloud travels in a circular enclosure like a stream, what we would now call a slipstream or wormhole. Man could not enter God's presence before Christ. God the Father could not be in the presence of sin. This cloud explains this transitional problem. Recent speculations by fringe scientists about space/time traveling in this way is described as a warping or bending of the space/time continuum. This text of scripture could be revealing this kind of travel as a fact. And this covering or vehicle is a cloud, or as we have seen by other verses, an angelic order of beings from the eternal realm. Simply the way God chose to travel. This gives a whole new meaning to the anointed cherub that covers. Consider this next scripture in context. It describes events surrounding the appearance of the Antichrist at the end times. 2th2:9 Even him, whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. Signs and lying wonders, as commented by one of the top ancient Greek scholars of today, Spiros Zodiates, Doctor of Theology, states that these two words do not refer to different classes of miracles, but to different qualities of the same miracle. Terrace is a miracle regarded as startling, imposing, frequently used elsewhere for strange appearances in the heavens. See Mayan, a miracle with an ethical end and purpose. They are valuable not so much for what they are as for what they indicate. With this understanding we can expect strange appearances from the skies bearing an ethical or moral message. One that is contrary to the God of the Bible and points to the coming Antichrist. I do not know of any other twofold event that could sound more like the sightings and reported messages of UFOs and aliens.
If you think about this history, ancient Egyptians, the Sumerians, the American natives, the South American natives, the Central American natives, all of them have myths about sky gods and portals to other places, whether it's heaven, some spiritual place, or an actual place. If it's an actual place, then what is it? If it's another dimension, what is it? Well, by definition, it is a wormhole.
Something that I've observed in studying this subject of ancient stargates and wormholes for a couple of decades now is that we literally could rewrite the history of humanity, that virtually every war, major war, has been an occult war. It's been about control of locations of ancient stargates or ancient knowledge. It's been about utilizing that technology.
What I found out when I was talking to Cliff off camera, and I talked to him at length, was the fact that the elders are afraid of the white people learning how to open the gates and close the gates. We talked about what was available in the Grand Canyon. We talked about what was available in pretty much the major landforms that are scattered throughout the desert Southwest, and also the deep underground military bunkers that seem to have been positioned in the area of stargates.
An incredible story from the Tucson area involves Mount Graham, and the revelation that it in ancient times was considered a portal or gateway to the Native Americans, and has now been literally in a way seized by the Vatican, who constructed their Lucifer Observatory atop Mount Graham. Completely off limits to ordinary people, but yet this represents potentially an ancient Stargate site and is another example of how power structures in this world are obsessed with and fully aware of and understand the power of some of these nodal points on the planet.
Given the track record of not only the U.S. government, but other governments around the world, and also powerful organizations like the Vatican, Cliff Mahoody's concern about the outsiders' threat to Native American secret places is not unfounded. The Department of Defense and the federal government continue to try to obtain ancient Stargate technology. The evidence can be found in a Department of Defense white paper that was published in 1998 at the request and direction of the DoD.
They started a lot of these national parks. They started isolating those places. For example, the Grand Canyon National Park. You go clear up to the Pacific coast, like Mount Shasta and Mount Adams and those places where they actually still have contact. And there's the common term is Stargate or wormhole or whatever, vortex or whatever you call it. And Sedona, for example, there's a lot of those places out there. But what has happened within the last 100 years is because of the interference made by the outside people in wanting to learn about where all these activities, how they're related. It has become very well distorted. And right now the military has taken over those places.
Something that is really quite astonishing in one respect, but also very affirming in another, is the predominance of how these portals and gateways are located now on military bases. One that immediately comes to mind, of course, is Stonehenge in Wiltshire. The area of where we see the most crop circles is literally on an English military base. And you find this, of course, next to Saqqara in Egypt, another Egyptian military base. The U.S. military, when we go into Iraq, we're going in there for the Stargate secrets that Saddam Hussein was assembling. So you see over and over again, world military has interest in these portals and gateways, and likely, once again, it's not because what is on the surface, it's because of what is going on beneath the earth in those locations.
On the surface, that 1998 DoD publication seems to set boundaries between the military's use of Native American lands, especially where their sacred sites are concerned. However, like other military bases and confiscated lands in other countries, page 36 of the report appears to contain smoking gun evidence of the DoD's dubious intent. Several tribes have traditions which recount their passage from another star system to this one and their emergence on our planet at a particular location. These sites may be understood as portals, where it is possible to pass from one universe to another. With the advent of chaos theory and the elaboration of knowledge of the potential of black holes in the space and the time fabric of the universe, these traditions now take on added significance. And in the footnote on the same page, it specifically says, the admission that space-time portals exist and that spiritual people can use them to move from one physical universe to another has been a very recent development, preceding this study by only a few years. Conversations with people from the Sioux, Gros Ventre, Cheyenne, and Cherokee within the past several years, now held in strict confidence as to particularities, seem to suggest that these sites will be very important in the future. These traditions now take on added significance? And portals will be very important in the future? Regardless of the policy laid out by this paper and existing laws designed to protect Native American sacred sites, including stargates and portals, not the DoD, nor the federal government, nor the state government of Arizona stepped in to stop the Vatican from stealing Mount Graham from the Apache. That site was reported to be one of their 3 most sacred places on Earth. Oh, and it also just so happened to be the location of a working Stargate. Cliff Mahooty was right. So, this begs the question, is the United States government, its 3-letter agencies, or some other shadow unit of the deep state trying to gather ancient technologies or knowledge for their own nefarious purposes?
There's something that's not right here. And I've had many people behind doors tell me that this was real, I was part of that, or this happened, or this didn't happen. But then you see things like we'll have a whistleblower plan to debrief Congress, and suddenly they come up missing or dead or won't testify. And those are the things that bother me, because that would put there being some sort of organizational concept outside of the laws of our Constitution, and that frightens me. That there could be a cabal of people, maybe it's a deep state, maybe it's something worse, that's trying to keep something from us. And what is that? What is that something? Is there truly a war going on with something here on the planet that that whoever these people are that don't want us to know think we're not capable of handling it? I don't know. But that to me is one of the imperative drivers. I'm not saying I believe any of it, but I'm also not saying I don't believe any of it. What I'm saying is there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that suggests there should be an investigation into it to determine what in the world is really going on, because there's more going on than what's been revealed. I'll guarantee that, because I know that for a fact.
Whether or not there's a global conspiracy occurring regarding ancient technologies and UAPs remains to be seen. Certainly, the evidence points to a cover-up. However, what is not in doubt is the fact that people all over the world are seeing spirals in the sky and on ancient petroglyphs.
The desert Southwest, especially in the Four Corner regions of the United States, and their affiliation or their open acknowledgement of stargates is astonishing. And you cannot separate the myths and legends from the spirals. Whenever you see a spiral any place in the world, that is the denoting of a stargate location.
The spirals and the stargates can be opened by just about anybody, anybody that has the knowledge and the skills that has to do with rituals and prayer.
You see these spirals in the sky. For example, that major one that happened in Norway just before Barack Obama received the Nobel Peace Prize immediately signaled some kind of a stargate or wormhole technology.
The stargates are basically the openings. Any person that asks for permission to speak to their gods and to the spirit world, as we call it. These stargates can be opened up through prayers, through sacrifice, making of potteries and whistles. These instruments were used to open up these stargates. These doorways, dimensional spirals will open up.
When one can appreciate the meaning of the spiral as a symbol for a gateway into other realms, It gives you sort of a pair of magic glasses then to peer around the world. We see spirals on rock art all over the world going back many thousands of years. And when we see the spiral, it represents a portal or a gateway, but they also represent sound or vibration. An important attribute of the Stargate technology of the ancients. There was a clear belief that sound, or perhaps chanting or other sounds, could be utilized to open these portals and gateways. So by appreciating the symbol of the spiral, it puts us into the language, if you will, of these Stargate travelers.
We know throughout our history, throughout ancient texts and mythologies and theologies, that people saw things in the sky. Do these ancient legends, myths, and rituals really connect to an architecture, to an algorithm, to opening up portals to other places? You know, there are ancient Navajo sand paintings that show certain sand paintings create portals in the sky, and they always draw them with a spiral.
Strange panels, which are thought to be stargates or portals, have been excavated from archaeological digs from around the world over the last 150 years, and specifically from the mid-1800s to the mid-1900s. Ancient technology hunters have pursued these gates, and of particular interest are the Nazis and Hitler, who believed in the significance of this ancient Stargate knowledge. These photographs are the original pics from those excavation sites. We have had a graphic artist reproduce these pictures in a much higher quality. However, great care was taken to ensure that the depictions were exact representations of the original, low-quality, older prints. Of significance are the strange symbols that are often found on the borders of the gates.
What's difficult for people to understand is there's a universal language system that even predates the creation of Adam and Eve. That would be called a pre-Adamic written system, symbol system, and also sonic symbols.
This language can also be found on ancient artifacts from all over the world. In most cases, these otherworldly specimens are believed to be alien in nature. However, Gen 6 Productions believes that this language is a clear indication of fallen angel interference with mankind. This language is a combination of strange symbols and hieroglyphs, and based upon our research, the symbols are not a single letter as in our alphabet, but a whole series of thought, not unlike Chinese and Japanese characters. Gen 6 Productions has funded the gathering and deciphering of this ancient alien language over the last few years. This effort has literally cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, an army of extremely smart volunteers, as well as exhaustive supercomputer time. Steve says that it's like God placed a time lock on the revealing of these gates and this language until modern technology could catch up. In addition, it wasn't until science fiction movies like Stargate and Contact were released which gave society the ability to consider the existence of portals.
The modern world of advanced science has been handed down and taught. They have been given this ancient concept. It identifies as the first principle to all life, setting itself in the place of God. Only unlike the scriptures, they fail to properly identify and inform the people of the supernatural implications brought about by the demonic forces that operate with them, from them, and through them.
Speaking of ancient technologies that are very real, East Indian legends and myths are replete with them.
When we turn to India, East India, we find amazing stories. The Mahabharata, for example, is an Indian text that is replete with descriptions of vimanas, as they're called, these celestial vehicles, the vehicles of the gods, wars between the gods, what sounds like advanced laser weapons or sound weapons, nuclear war is even hinted at in these stories. And it all brings forth this idea that the ancient world was very different than we have understood until now. That in fact, the ancient world and the imagination, they conceived of these weapons and technologies that we are now just on the verge of duplicating ourselves.
Such ancient technologies continue to lead us to the question, what or who was on the earth in our ancient past and had the intelligence and technological savvy to accomplish such tasks?
Think about this. We always talk about the Big Bang hypothesis or the Big Bang theory about how the universe was created. And people only think about, oh, well, there was some point in time, 13.8 billion years ago or something like that, and a little singular point that had everything in it exploded and expands and becomes all of space, all the universe. But what people gloss over on that is, where's time in that? Is it just that time is unraveling as it's expanding? No. When the universe was created, space and time were created together. For whatever reason, we can only remember or experience the present. In fact, I think it's probably the present is the only time that exists. All the other times are past and future. They're all the same time. They're all connected.
But time isn't the only issue we're talking about. This advanced technology also affects space. Gen 6's Director of Antiquities, Jesse G., was invited to view a downed alien spacecraft in Mexico while he was on the hunt for alien artifacts during an expedition that Gen 6 had funded. After being blindfolded and driven around in circles for hours, he finally arrived at the secret location. Taking him to the top of a mountain, they removed brush and tree branches that they'd used to hide the craft. When they did, Jesse was stunned to see what appeared to be a floating rock or asteroid, 5'9" in height and 15 feet in length. When he looked inside the craft, the interior of the craft had a huge expanse beyond what his eyes could see, as if space itself had been affected by their technology. Whatever this otherworldly technology is that has created these stargates and craft, it certainly does have the ability to manipulate time and space.
As Travis and I continue our investigation, we realized that the ancient Egyptians said that this image on the wall of the temple at Dendera actually represents the moment of creation, but it's also potentially involved in their Stargate technology as well. Because we have to remember that the fundamental premise of the ancient Egyptian culture was that we can open gateways into other realms.
In Earth in the Crosshairs, our purpose in putting out this documentary based on ancient stargates, ancient portals, ancient megalithic structures, references to the doorway to the gods, references to portals to hell. We're talking about a world of spiritual influence that most people don't believe exists. A dimension is precisely defined as a parallel space-time continuum which is fully contained just as the space-time continuum we live in and understand. So in essence, the dimensionality or the specific structure of our dimension has the equivalent in the spiritual realm. It's important to understand that the notion of time and distance and other things in each dimension can vary according to the rules set of that dimension. What does not need to match the definitions active in our dimension. In other words, other dimensions can have different laws of physics, different entities, and they can have different technologies. But what's important to understand is not only is it parallel, but in Earth in the Crosshairs, we're talking about war from that dimension coming into our dimension.
This idea of defeating our own laws of physics and traveling to other dimensions and places in faster than light speed is what has driven governments and organizations throughout history in their quest for alien and Stargate technology.
Some have proposed that Wernher von Braun, the Nazi rocket scientist who was brought over during Operation Paperclip and became one of the instrumental figures in the development of the Apollo program, was also privy to ancient Stargate secrets, that in fact the Nazis had possessed this technology as well, or were perhaps on the verge of rediscovering it. Back in the 90s, I wrote a book called 1 Foot in Atlantis about the occult history of World War II and what was then the little known facts that there was a race between the Nazis and the United States government to recover this lost technology.
Probably the most significant Stargate on Earth is in the Antarctic. A large Stargate located on Maud Island was first found by the Nazis in 1938 on a trip there, seeking occult weapons, etc. Most people don't know, but Hitler had entire groups of expeditionary forces scouring the world, whether they were sent to the Himalayas, whether they were sent to the jungles of Africa, whether they were sent to the deserts of the Gobi Desert. They had written histories that they had searched out through the annals of time and were dispatching because they knew there was a force. The Nazis called it the Vril, V-R-I-L, a specific energy.
So now, looking at what we're doing and things that have come to light and what we're doing at Skinwalker Ranch, you know, we were thinking, or even I was thinking of the universe as we're hundreds of years from inventing the technology that will enable us to bend space and time to do faster than light work. But with all the UAP information that's coming out, and maybe even some of the whistleblower stuff that says we actually have them and we've been working on them, and we haven't had much luck because we've had the wrong people and hadn't had any oversight. We're getting answers. And I can tell you, when I first started work back in the 80s, late 80s, when I graduated high school, started doing engineering and science work, if you said you were going to go work on a UFO program or you wanted to work on UFOs, they would laugh. You know, they would say, no, you can't do that.
The power required to open a Stargate and to keep a Stargate open, for instance, for a man-sized 6-foot diameter, is 250 TeVs, TeVs. That's electron volts, and it's huge power. Both the voltage as well as the current have a significant bearing upon the size and shape of the doorway, and its stability and its behavior. The tunneling effects are due to the stability of the energy system on both sides of the Stargate of the interdimensional portal. In other words, you're trying to keep the energy stabilized between both points.
The question is, are scientists already doing otherworldly experiments on planet Earth without the general public knowing about it? To find the answer to that question, all you have to do is to look to the Switzerland and France border at CERN's Large Hadron Collider.
I've long been intrigued by the goings-on at the particle accelerator at CERN near Geneva, Switzerland. And I actually visited CERN because I was deeply interested in this subject. And the reason I was intrigued by these particle accelerators is because you need one of these devices, or in theory, you need a particle accelerator like this in order to create the exotic matter that can open the mouth of a wormhole. And in numerous instances of ancient art, you will see in depictions of Stargate travelers, or what could be Stargate technology, figures holding either a rod in their hand or a staff or a ring. And it suggests to me that what if these are advanced particle accelerators? Ours are a mile long. But what if these god beings have ones that are so powerful they can hold them in their hand? And they've reduced the size of it greatly. I was personally mostly intrigued about the art and symbolism at CERN. For example, I had learned there was a depiction of Shiva dancing in a portal or gateway outside of CERN. And that was an immediate tip-off that, yeah, perhaps there's something more going on here than just this innocuous science experiment, this world-changing, potentially, science experiment, because, of course, the particle accelerator at CERN was designed to search for the God particle. And I was very interested in this because Dr. Leon Lederman, in his book about the God particle, said what we're really doing here at CERN is recreating the Tower of Babel. And that sent all the bells and whistles going off in my mind. It's like ding, ding, ding. They're trying to recreate this ancient technology. They are talking about accessing a primordial light at CERN and leading to the discovery of the God particle and ultimately this high energy physics that can assist us in recreating the Tower of Babel. And I put all that together. It's like, wait a minute, this is a Stargate quest. This is a recreation of ancient Stargate technology.
What's the end goal of CERN? They could care less about finding the God particle. And interestingly enough, at the end of the tunnel of the CERN project, the relativistic heavy ion collider, are glass panels with Hebrew characters, in essence with symbols and glyphs. And they're transmitting those symbols and glyphs to another dimension.
What are they doing? Giving instructions, hey, press this button, come on through. The requirement to open a stargate to a man-sized 6-foot diameter is the ripping open or collapse of the containment field of the plasma, which is behind the magnetic doorway. One of the hidden secrets of all the fusion projects is to understand how to open and close, under human control, the magnetic doorways which guard the different RF cavities in the core of the Earth.
With the data and the measurements on many experiments that we've done at Skinwalker Ranch, we've seen effects on modern scientific exquisite equipment that I can't explain away. For some reason, there's a region in the center of this particular anomalous zone we call the triangle that the light is spread into a ring around the triangle as opposed to going through midair and hitting the mesa and coming back to the LiDAR like it should. And the only thing that makes sense with that is akin to something described in general relativity like a black hole or maybe even a wormhole. But the problem is, if it were a black hole, for example, or some kind of gravitational bending of space and time there, that much bending of space and time, at least as far as we understand it, would have ripped the planet in half. It would have killed us all. So it would have to be some kind of advanced technology that understands how to do this without destroying everybody around it.
Being a Native American, we follow prophecies and we look up to the skies, the planet, the stars, the heavens, the spiritual world, the physical form, the energy, triggering points of the universe. There's what we call in the modern world as medicine men. They have special techniques and special ideas or special practices that they can open up these stargates and they can travel through time. I, as just like a regular person, don't have those skills, but people in the religion sectors all across the world know that these doorways open up and they can travel from one dimension to the next.
It's a real wide system, because it includes not only the Kachina people, but also in the priesthood. Each one of them has their own rituals, but they actually could talk to a person. It's just a pile of rocks. But when they go there, they know where they are. We call them places of payment, or the ritual places where we go to meet the gods. He saw a half human and half animal being, and they look like the Egyptians with the bird head. Those people, they used to come in their form. They used to have representatives from different systems, and they had to go through a certain way, and a lot of them occurred through the Stargate portals at that time.
In Galatians 4:3, we read, "So we too, when we were children, were held in bondage under the elementary principles of the world." And in Colossians 2:8 it says, "See to it that there is no one who takes you captive through philosophy and empty deception, in accordance with human tradition, in accordance with the elementary principles of the world, rather than in accordance with Christ." In both cases, the phrase elementary principles of the world is from the Greek word stoicheon, which, according to the Strong's Concordance, can mean heavenly bodies. As Jesse G. was pondering this, the Holy Spirit revealed to him that the orbs and aliens that people are seeing are those very heavenly bodies. This then gave him an even deeper understanding. The following are his thoughts on the issue.
They are operating within the boundaries and constraints of the universal laws that govern our physical realm. They are operating and maneuvering within the realm and the sphere of our existence, utilizing every known and available particle component, from the lowest, most primitive to the highest, most complicated and advanced levels, manipulating down and into the most intricate detail within the spectrum of the particle world of quantum mechanics, then manifesting themselves as quantum particles on a larger scale. That is, when they are not deceptively masquerading as craft or mythological creatures and deities from our ancient past.
Both angelic and fallen angelic beings can equally utilize this technology. I mean, I would like to think that the power of love, the power of Christ, would be an essential aspect of this. But the stories betray that. And instead, they say that the fallen ones, the darker entities, also are able to utilize this technology.
Where are they coming from? How many of them are here? And what are they doing? What is their intent? That's the thing that scares me.
The fallen angels' endgame, whether you want to accept the fact they're aliens from other planets or interdimensional beings from a spiritual world that's another dimension, separate and distinct from our physical world, the endgame is that the greatest deception in mankind's history is coming into play. When it comes to the belief of the common man, they believe that the aliens create them and that the aliens are coming back, the Prometheus factor, if you will. So that's where we're at right now, and we're just beginning to see the beginning, the advanced guard of the total alien infestation of planet Earth. Earth is in the crosshairs. The gates of hell have opened.
Daniel 12:4, but thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal up the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. In other words, no one could understand the full meaning of what Daniel saw and tried to describe until science and technology could explain what he was shown. So Daniel carefully used words that could best describe them in a vague general sense, but within those words were very particular meanings that would only make sense as the knowledge caught up with them in the last days. We are in that time now, and all of the stops are being pulled out in our understanding of the scriptures. As science and technology reaches into areas of almost godlike abilities, we have to question, where is this all taking us to? The Bible already knows, because God knows. Ecclesiastes 1:9 through 11 says, that which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of things that are to come by those who will come after. God has his own plan of redemption, even before the fall of mankind, as described in Revelation, stating that before the foundation of the world, the Lamb of God was slain. See, you have to think outside of time where God dwells. Satan has gone before these revelations were made known to man with imitations of God's overall plan of salvation in the ancient Sumerian beliefs, the Egyptian mystery schools, the Greeks, the Romans, and virtually every empire of civilization throughout mankind's history. Zeitgeist has done a very good job of reviewing these patterns, trying to destroy or shake up the Christian faith. In our linear thinking, it is only natural for us to believe that the first civilizations were copied by the former. I say thinking linear can be the trap that has shaken so many from their faith. Understanding time from God's concept and perspective is why the enemy Satan does not want you to know about time. It is his hidden secret where he will deceive all the world into his own agenda, looking like the originator. In fact, he is the great pretender, a copycat, who cannot create anything for himself. He can only imitate in the same but opposite fashion, creating alternatives to the truth, making them fuzzy and confused.
In 1989, Al Bielek came forward to reveal his participation in the astonishing Philadelphia experiment, and that he had survived time warping, invisibility, and electromagnetic zapping.
What is this machine?
Well, this is a time traveling machine. To start it up, we have a special key. Which we put in here.
This is actually called a trix. So what this is basically another watch, but this contains all the DNA from other extraterrestrials. I could go through all the extraterrestrials and I just slap it like this, I would turn into them.
I was a child participant in DARPA's Project Pegasus, which was the U.S. time-space program at the time of the emergence of different forms of time travel in the U.S. defense technical community. It's been concealed from the American people.
Essentially meaning that the rate at which time passes can be sped up or slowed down is probably the simplest way to put it.
Time can be sped up or slowed down.
Correct.
Effectively resulting in time travel?
In 1995, Dr. Anderson founded the Time Travel Research Center, today the world's most advanced research laboratory dedicated exclusively to the study and development of time control technology and its application.
You're a physicist. You were employed at a young age by the United States Air Force. This man's actually figuring out ways to stop time and make it go forward faster and go backward and all sorts of neat stuff that we're going to get into.
His people at Area 51, and they're there most of the time, and he is there off and on.
Most people think that time travel is impossible, but believe it or not, there's no law of physics preventing time travel. We now believe that the river of time may have whirlpools. The river of time may fork into two rivers, and the river of time may perhaps be bent like a pretzel.
Among the items he says he saw and handled were a piece of metal with really unique properties. The atoms, he said, were all aligned. It had a hardness and strength which could not be duplicated by human technology. He saw photographs and reports concerning autopsies performed on alien bodies.
Time travel is something you have to take very seriously, because Einstein's equations do allow for time travel. And they're blueprints, blueprints for different kinds of time travel designs that are compatible with Einstein's theory.
The Montauk Project, what was it? What is it? The Navy fighter aircraft were all equipped with the invisibility system, and the continuation of research begun during World War II on time travel. Very few people know that the Germans developed a working time machine in 1945.
We won't go without this machine, without that key.
Yeah.
And then we have safety switches on it. We have safety switches.
By 1968, the U.S. defense community had pioneered Tesla teleportation, which is the capability to open up a vortal tunnel in time-space through which somebody can pass. And by the fall of 1970, had found a way to adjust the time of the arrival of the individual via teleportation.
Right now, what we're doing is we can create a small self-contained, what we call time warp field. And within that field, we can accelerate the rate at which time passes or slow down the rate at which time passes relative to the time rate outside of the field.
Many of our nation's top theoretical physicists insist that with a proper amount of energy, time travel is definitely going to be possible. Believe me, it's interesting.
It is true that time travel is possible within our laws of math and physics. The first products that most of your listeners will see in the marketplace will be time control devices. For example, they might see a chamber used in a hospital that has the ability to slow down time.
If you have an infinite cylinder and the cylinder rotates, and you dance around the cylinder like dancing around the maypole, you can also come back before you left and meet your parents before you're born.
Being at Area 51, having access to the TR-3B, the TR-6, I could make a time jump with either one of those vehicles, but they don't have to be authorized by the military.
time and space are like a fabric, like rubber, like a trampoline net. However, if you stretch the trampoline net so much, it can rip, perhaps. Turn this trampoline net into a pretzel and allow yourself to go backwards in time.
They were going to strip me of all my memories, put me through the age regression equipment, reduce my physical size of the body in age to about 1 year, and then plug me into another family in the past, namely 1927, which is what it turned out to be.
This button here, that is when this is up, we can go either to the future, is up, or down for the past.
We have some remarkable technical capabilities that have been held back from the public that we could use to literally transform our society. And Nikola Tesla discovered a form of energy that he found was latent and pervasive throughout the entire physical universe.
The creation of a field that will allow you to accelerate or slow down the rate at which time passes. The generator that we use to create that field is called the time warp field generator.
All right, is electromagnetic energy involved?
Yes, it is.
I knew it. I knew it.
When somebody's injured, they can be put into a chamber to slow the rate of time to prevent damage while treatment is being prepared. These are the types of time control products that will be fielded first into the real world mass market.
And his name is Rock, and he's a gray alien. He acts as an envoy to the United States and the U.S. Air Force, and he has a detachment of his people at Area 51.
Phase 3 was the development and the continuing work on time tunnels, time research, and what could be done with it. Transporting yourself or an object through time, you maintain the same physical location reference.
When you array radiant energy and somebody jumps through it, their inertia opens up a vortal tunnel in time-space. There is no transformation of the individual, and the individual does not have to be traveling at the speed of light.
Hidden Magnetic Portals Around Earth, presented by Science at NASA. A favorite theme of science fiction is the portal, an extraordinary opening in space or time that connects travelers to distant realms. A good portal is a shortcut, a guide, a door into the unknown, if only they actually existed. It turns out that they do, sort of. And a NASA-funded researcher at the University of Iowa has figured out how to find them. We call them X-points, or electron diffusion regions, explains plasma physicist Jack Scudder of the University of Iowa. They're places where the magnetic field of Earth connects to the magnetic field of the Sun, creating an uninterrupted path leading from our own planet to the Sun's atmosphere 93 million miles away. Observations by NASA's Themis spacecraft and Europe's cluster probes suggest that these magnetic portals open and close dozens of times each day. They're typically located a few tens of thousands of kilometers from Earth, where the geomagnetic field meets the onrushing solar wind. Most portals are small and short-lived. Others are yawning, vast, and sustained. Energetic particles can flow through the openings, heating Earth's upper atmosphere, sparking geomagnetic storms, and igniting bright polar auroras. NASA is planning a mission called MMS, short for Magnetospheric Multiscale Mission, due to launch in 2014 to study the phenomenon. Bristling with energetic particle detectors and magnetic sensors, the 4 spacecraft of MMS will spread out in Earth's magnetosphere and surround the portals to observe how they work. Just one problem: finding them. Magnetic portals are invisible, unstable, and elusive. They open and close without warning, and there are no signposts to guide us in, notes Scudder. Actually, there are signposts, and Scudder has found them. Portals form via the process of magnetic reconnection. Mingling lines of magnetic force from the Sun and Earth crisscross and join to create the openings. X-points are where the crisscross takes place. The sudden joining of magnetic fields can propel jets of charged particles from the X-point, creating an electron diffusion region. To learn how to pinpoint these events, Scudder looked at data from a space probe that orbited Earth more than 10 years ago. In the late 1990s, NASA's Polar spacecraft spent years in Earth's magnetosphere, explains Scudder, and it encountered many X-points during its mission. Because Polar carried sensors similar to those of MMS, Scudder decided to see how an X-point looked to Polar. Using Polar data, we have found 5 simple combinations of magnetic field and energetic particle measurements that tell us when we've come across an X-point or an electron diffusion region. A single spacecraft, properly instrumented, can make these measurements. This means that a single member of the MMS constellation, using the diagnostics, can find a portal and alert other members of the constellation. Mission planners long thought that MMS might have to spend a year or so learning to find portals before it could study them. Scudder's work shortcuts the process, allowing MMS to get to work without delay. It's a shortcut worthy of the best portals of fiction. Only this time, the portals are real. And with the new signposts, we know how to find them. For a portal to more NASA science news, visit science.nasa.
Gigantic spiraling vortexes appear in the skies of Norway and Sweden. In the early hours of December 9th, 2009, thousands of people in northern Norway and Sweden were roused from their beds by concerned family and friends to witness an incredible celestial event. Some were just curious about the unusual light display. Others were frightened for their lives when they saw the massive white spiral with the blue tail, growing at immense speed, with what appeared to be a black hole at the center. There had recently been serious concerns raised about atomic testing at the nearby Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland that could potentially generate a black hole capable of swallowing the Earth. Some speculated it could be ionospheric testing by ESCAT in Tromsø, the Norwegian version of Alaska's HARP program. Others observed the tunnel-like appearance of the phenomenon and thought it was a wormhole in space, possibly opened by extraterrestrials. Media outlets and police switchboards were flooded with reports of the event. Government officials scrambled to confirm a reasonable explanation and were quick to suggest a Russian missile test, which Russia quickly denied and then strangely changed their story just 24 hours later. Russia suddenly claimed it was a test of their new 40-foot Bulava missile gone wrong. A rare and embarrassing admission for Russia to make, but also one that didn't quite make sense. There were no reports of the sighting from Russia or Finland, closest to the alleged test site in the White Sea, and analysis of the video footage reveals a spiral 150 miles wide. Just what could these things be? Could a missile really continually spin around in perfect circles to make a vortex such as this? And if so, why were they testing missiles over populated areas anyway?
Your life, bound by time as we know it today. It will come to an end, as stated in Revelations 10:6. And the angel which I saw stood upon the sea and upon the earth, lifted up his hands toward heaven, and sware by him that liveth forever and ever, who created heaven and the things that were therein, and the earth and the things that therein are, and the sea and the things which are therein, that there should be time no longer. Yes, you just read it. It's in the Bible. Sometime during the Great Tribulation period, linear time will cease to exist as we know it today. Time and our concept of time is what physically separates dimensions. Here are the scriptural truths of this. Ecclesiastes 3:15, that which is has already been, and what is to be has already been, and God requires an account of what is past. By this scripture, we can see that past, present, or future of all things from God's perspective has already happened, and he requires an account for it all. God lives outside of time. That is why when addressing prophetic future events in the Bible, as told through the prophets, many times God speaks in the past tense for things that to us have not even happened yet, but to him it is already past. The idea of time as another dimension is confirmed by the words of Jesus. When Jesus stood before Pilate, he was asked if he were a king. Jesus responded in John 18:36, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight, so that I would not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from here." Pilate therefore said to him, "Are you a king then?" Jesus answered, "You say rightly that I am a king. For this cause I was born, and for this cause I came into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." This was not an admission that Jesus was from another planet by any means, but this text is used in ignorance by the secular UFO community to make that claim. The Greek word cosmos, used for world, means the orderly arrangement of this present universe or place, which is separate from God's domain. In this sense, it means dimension. Jesus was saying that this was not his dimension, where he lived, but he came into this one to complete his mission to undo the paradox that was created in the Garden of Eden and make a way back for his own.
We think as children that space and time are totally different. We can move in space, forward, backward, left, right, up and down. We can move in 3 dimensions. Einstein gave us a concept of the 4th dimension, that time is the 4th dimension, that if you were to have lunch with somebody in New York City, where I live, you'd say, meet me on 5th Avenue, on 42nd Street, on the 10th floor at noontime. So it takes 4 numbers to specify your existence and an event here in New York.
Now let's look at a few stories to show us that God is in complete control of linear time, going both ways, past or future. First, we will see an example of teleportation, which is an essential element to time travel. There was a biblical teleportation. Acts 8:20, come up out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord caught away Philip, and the eunuch saw him no more, and he went on his way rejoicing. But Philip was taken from the Gaza desert to almost 30 miles away, instantly to the former Philistine city of Ashdod, now called Azotus. Liberal apostate theologians try to tell us that this was a normal trip and nothing miraculous happened. I say that is an outright lie. It was described that Philip encountered an angel of the Lord who told him to make a normal trip by foot into the desert. Then it said he was caught away by the Holy Spirit back to this other city. The same word is used for the saints who are caught up, commonly called the rapture. Yes, something supernatural happened, and it was a miracle. However, this miracle does have a physics and a framework that was created by God, and it does exist. Once man discovered or was given this understanding, in his vanity, he thinks his eyes will be opened and he will be like God, just what Satan had promised. Dealing with Satan, you will always get more than you wanted and never what you needed. Now let's see how time was made to stand still.
Hello, this is Malcolm Bowden. I'd like to talk to you today about Joshua's long day that is recorded in Joshua chapter 10, verses 12 to 14. 5 kings were opposing him, but he won a great victory and was chasing them. But he needed more time to catch them and destroy them. Let me read that passage to you. On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, O sun, stand still over Gibeon. O moon, over the valley of Ajalon. So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies. As it is written in the book of Jasher, the sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day. There has never been a day like it before or since. A day when the Lord listened to a man. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel. Now many people consider this a complete myth. It is just a Jewish folk tale in an attempt to boost their link with a miracle-working God. However, Gerardus Bauer has collected stories of a long day or a long night from several tribes from around the world. Let me just give you a few examples. In Egypt, the Greek historian Herodotus recorded that when he visited Egypt, the priests there showed him an ancient manuscript that told the story of a day that lasted twice as long as a normal day. As they had accurate water clocks, they could record time. They could easily, therefore, record that a long day had taken place. And there are similar references to a long day in both China and in India. Several North American Indian tribes have accounts of long nights. The Ojibways, Wyandots and Abungis tell of a long night. The Omahas tell of the sun being caught in a rabbit's trap and only released just before dawn. The Dogribs tell of the sun suddenly becoming dark at noon. Similarly, in South America, the Mexicans, Aztecs, Mayans and Peruvians And in West Africa also, there are stories of a long night. Now some may think that these stories have arisen because of the superstitious nature of ancient people. So if so, there would be surely a random distribution. One tribe might have fabricated a story of a long day, and a few miles away another tribe might have a story of a long night. But that is not what we find, because there are two interesting features of these stories. First of all, if you plot the stories on a map of the world, you see quite quickly that they are gathered into two areas. The long day stories are gathered in one area, Egypt, China and India, and in the second area, North and South America, there are stories of a long night. Now you can plot the shadow of night and day as it travels around the world, and at that time of the year it is like a sine wave, a curve that rises to the north hemisphere and then falls to the south and then goes back to the north again as it travels round the earth. Now it is possible to move this shadow to such a position that the shadow of night completely covers all the long night stories, and the daylight part of the curve on the upper section covers all the long day stories. Therefore, these stories cannot be random local myths, but a worldwide event that actually happened and is recorded in the folk stories of those people that actually experienced it. Now, the other point is that the exact position of the shadow is not certain. It can be moved within certain limits. However, there is one point that defines just where that shadow should be. Sir James Fraser records that on a hillside on an eastern island of Fiji, the natives tie the weeds together, quote, to stop the sun going down, as it is said that it once did. This places the edge of the shadow at this point, giving a more accurate position for where the sun stood still. From this, Gerardus Bau calculates that the time was about 9 a.m. in Israel. Now, using the historic dates from these tribes, Bau calculated that it was May the 18th to the 15th in 1448 BC, and that it started at about 9 a.m. for Joshua's long day to begin.
Now we will see how time was made to go backward, something many physicists who claim future travel is possible, but travel to the past is. In spite of man's assumed knowledge, the Bible says otherwise, and we have an example where God reversed time for just a few hours.
In those days Hezekiah became ill and was at the point of death. The prophet Isaiah, son of Amos, went to him and said,
"This is what the Lord says. Put your house in order, because you are going to die. You will not recover."
Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord.
Remember, Lord, how I have walked before you faithfully and with wholehearted devotion, and have done what is good in your eyes.
And Hezekiah wept bitterly. Then the word of the Lord came to Isaiah.
Go and tell Hezekiah, this is what the Lord, the God of your father David, says. I have heard your prayer and seen your tears. I will add 15 years to your life, and I will deliver you and this city from the hand of the king of Assyria. I will defend this city. This is the Lord's sign to you, that the Lord will do what he has promised. I will make the shadow cast by the sun go back the 10 steps it has gone down on the stairway of Ahaz.
So the sunlight went back the 10 steps it had gone down.
Theoretical physicists now claim that travel backward and forward are possible by bending space and utilizing wormholes.
A wormhole is basically a thin tube of space that connects two very, very distant parts of space. So it's almost like a tunnel. It's a little part of space. You go in there and you pop out somewhere else in the universe.
A tunnel through space. A shortcut through the billions of light years separating the farthest ends of the universe. It begs the question of how anything could bore a hole through space.
A wormhole is basically like a tunnel through space itself that can connect one region to another region potentially very far away. So to illustrate that, we're taking space and imagining it as this two-dimensional sheet of paper. So we have a wormhole mouth that you can go in, and then the other end is a place you can go out. So you imagine a tunnel that goes into there and comes out of there. And you might say, well, it would take me longer to get from one place to another if I went through that tunnel than if I just took the direct route through ordinary space. But the point is that Einstein tells us that space and time are curved. They're flexible. So we can imagine picking up this piece of paper and curling these two regions so that they're close to each other. Then you go into that end of the wormhole, you come outside the other end, and there's a shortcut in between them in which the distance is not that much. So the wormhole provides a way that you can travel what appears to be a very long distance in a very short period of time.
Could the Bible actually describe this as a truth already known by God because he created this method? Yes, of course, and here is the scriptures mixed in with what the scientists claim. Hold on to something, this is a mind. In the 22nd chapter of 2 Samuel, which is exactly the same song mentioned by King David in Psalms 18, David is recounting and singing praises to the Lord for a great victory he had just had at the hands of the Lord over his enemies. He describes praying to the Lord for help and then describes the Lord upon hearing David, which comes from his throne in heaven to earth to deliver him from his enemies. Most commentaries through the ages have avoided making any comments to this particular text, and in any translation or commentary of this text, it does not seem to make any sense at all. It is because they were trying to understand something that in their time could not make any sense to them at all. They translated the words to the best general overall definition and just left it at that. Until this time now, the time of the end, we can now look and understand the meanings of these original Hebraic words, and it's a mind blower. So let's take word by word and sentence by sentence this text in 2 Samuel. In context, this is a narration of David praying. God answers, and then he is coming to earth from heaven to deliver David from his enemies. This is not some flowery poetic description of some kind of allegorical or spiritualistic text. This is a literal narration under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit as to how God is traveling from heaven to earth. He bowed also the heavens and came down. Old Testament Strong's number 5186 says, Natah is a primitive root to stretch or spread out, by implication to bend. In other words, he bent space and came down. To further confirm this idea, the rest of the sentence says that darkness was under his feet. Darkness, Strong's number 6205 from the root 6201, means a gloom or thick, dense darkness that drips down under his feet as a pathway to recon a different area from heaven to earth. This darkness is a thick cloud stretched out or dripping under his feet as a pathway for God to travel. This is describing a black hole or a wormhole. And there may be a problem. Let's see what the theoretical physicists say about this.
People don't realize that Einstein's equations allow for time travel. Now, Isaac Newton thought that time was like an arrow. Once you fired it, it never deviated. 1 second on Earth was 1 second on Mars, was 1 second on Jupiter. Einstein comes along and says, not so fast. Time is a river, this old man river, that meanders and slows down and speeds up on its way through the universe, so that 1 second on Earth is not 1 second on Mars, is not 1 second on Jupiter. The new wrinkle in all this is we now believe that the river of time may have whirlpools, may fork into two separate rivers, in which case time travel may be possible. The simplest way to build a time machine is to drill a hole in space, concentrate enough energy at a single point so that a gateway opens up to a distant point, perhaps in another universe. Now, in principle, this is a solution of Einstein's equations. Stephen Hawking once said that time travel is not possible because where are the tourists from the future? And Stephen Hawking said there ought to be a law of physics preventing time travel. He was wrong. Stephen Hawking has now admitted that time travel is possible, though very expensive, very impractical for us Earthlings.
A gravitational field not only warps space, it also warps time. Now, for most intents and purposes here on Earth, we never have to worry about that. But near a black hole, gravity would be so strong that an observer standing, watching you jump into the hole, would see something quite strange. They wouldn't see you get sucked quickly into the hole. Instead, they would see your approach become slower and slower and slower until you reached a point known as the event horizon. This is a point in space where, once crossed, there's no going back. It is at that point that light can no longer escape. And so to a person watching you fall into the hole, that would be where your journey ended. You would seem almost frozen in space, the light coming off your body becoming increasingly red-shifted until you simply faded into nothingness. They would never see you cross the event horizon. But for you, of course, everything would seem fine and dandy. You would continue past that horizon to your now inevitable death. As you continue to approach the black hole's singularity, your view of the entire universe would get compressed into a smaller and smaller point in space behind you. If the black hole we're jumping into is large enough, things might actually be quite comfortable at that event horizon. We'll know that we're never going to escape and that our lives are pretty much over, but it might take us hours to actually reach a point where things started to hurt. Why would they hurt? Well, the closer you get to the singularity, the more significant the difference in gravitational pull is across space. And so parts of me that are closer to the singularity would be pulled more strongly than parts that were facing away. And my entire body would be stretched toward the singularity. The effect would be so incredible, scientists don't usually call it stretching, they call it spaghettification. Once you reached this point, you would be dead. Your molecules would be violently ripped and stretched apart, and when they got to the singularity, well, we don't really know what would happen. Perhaps they would completely disappear in violation of all the laws of physics, or maybe they would reappear elsewhere in the universe. It's believed that a moving or spinning black hole might actually create what is known as a wormhole, a way of transitioning across space faster than light. Not in any way that violates the laws of science, but in a way that takes advantage of the universe's dimension.
The rest of 2 Samuel 22:10 says, with darkness under his feet. The Hebrew words for darkness and feet, from their root words, can be telling us that the darkness described here is a dense, thick cloud stretched out or dripping around as a pathway for God's feet to examine what is going on. This could be describing a black hole or a wormhole. The Bible concurs with this problem of entering the eternal state of existence by mortal man. In 1 Corinthians 15, verses 50 and 51, now this I say, brethren, that the flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does corruption inherit incorruption. The word for cannot is a combination of two different Greek words. One is number 3756, which basically is no. It's primary word. Now the second word, number 1410, is the word dunami, and that basically is the power or ability. So this is absolutely no power or ability to inherit the kingdom of heaven. This is a frailty that exists in man. And it has to do with this mortal life. It also has to do somehow with blood. Mortal life is in the blood, as proclaimed in the Levitical laws in Leviticus 17:11. Jesus was described as having flesh and bone and not a disembodied spirit after the resurrection, yet he just walked through a wall and told Thomas to touch him. He was physical, but different than the earthly form. This is found in Luke 24:39. He is the firstborn of the dead, and we who believe in him are what follows him after our deaths, or at the rapture. This is found in Romans 8:29 and Colossians 1:18. Adam, before the fall, was described in the same way as having flesh and bone, Genesis 2:23. It is why the blood atonement of Christ is so important and why blood holds mankind to this linear existence. It is also why Satan has made the world fixated on blood sacrifices and blood drinking and mockery to God. Even Enoch, when taken by the Lord, was transformed or changed according to Hebrews 11:5 before entering into heaven. The Hebrew word for blood is dam, and in that sense we have all been damned or blooded to a death before entering the eternal state. You can see my series on the parallel universe for more details. So this is why the story of Philip being transported to another place is significant. It tells us that solid objects, including humans on a molecular level, can be taken apart and reassembled somehow through the space-time continuum. It becomes very important to understand that these things because the enemy, as you will see in this video later, is using this kind of knowledge of physics against our faith and belief in the Lord. It's part of a deception. It becomes necessary to understand these things so we have a solid foundation to our faith and understanding of how God has directed his love toward us. This prevents us from being deceived by Satan's master plan. We must briefly describe what the clouds of heaven are in relation to time because it is pivotal to understanding how God does things and how Satan, the great impostor, has broken these laws to give mankind forbidden knowledge to think he can be like God. 2 Samuel 22:11 says, "And he rode upon a cherub and did fly, and he was seen upon the wings of the wind." If we let the Bible interpret itself by itself proper, we see that this riding upon something is interchangeable with the use of cherub, which is an order of an angel, and some kind of cloud. Other scriptures about this include Isaiah 19:1, "The Lord rides upon a swift cloud," Psalms 18:10, "And he, God, rides upon a cherub and did fly, he did fly upon the wings of the wind." Is this interchangeable use of cloud and cherub a metaphor for administering God's grace as a vehicle, like some commentaries say, or could it literally mean a heavenly taxicab type vehicle? The next verse helps us toward a conclusion. Psalms 104:3 says, "Who makes the clouds his chariot, who walks upon the wings of the wind." In this verse, chariot is describing a literal transportation vehicle and has no metaphorical use whatsoever anywhere in the Bible. It is a vehicle in the use as a transportation. Now, the clincher to this thought is confirmed as doctrine, or can be considered doctrine, because it's found written by the prophet Ezekiel, and in the context, his now famous wheels within a wheel, that the UFO community ignorantly tries to claim and make the claim that these clouds of heaven are actually extraterrestrial spacecraft from another planet. Ezekiel, in describing, in the first chapter, he's walking along the river Kabar, when he sees heaven open and a cloud appears. Whenever a person or name appears in a story, this is to be taken as a historical narration of an actual event, not metaphorically, not symbolically. We get a description that matches the angelic beings that were built and placed on top of the Ark of the Covenant and covering within it. After a long description of visionary things and events that are symbolic, 10 chapters later, the literal encounter with that cloud came through an opening in heaven, and it is concluded by Ezekiel. It is interesting that the self-proclaimed biblical experts from the secular UFO community conveniently forget to mention this last part of the text of Ezekiel's wheels within a wheel. Ezekiel makes a conclusionary statement, a rather important one actually. In Ezekiel chapter 10, verse 20, "This is the living creature that I saw under the God of Israel by the river of Kabar, and I knew that they were the cherubims." The clouds of heaven Ezekiel saw was something he was already familiar with from prior encounters. He ties this whole thing up neatly by saying it all right here. The clouds of heaven are a living creature, a cherub, an order of an angelic being, but a living vehicle. This idea of living organic vehicles may have an important significance to another claim and problem theorized by physicists. So let's hear about it. So now let's take a look at what some of the theoretical physicists are claiming a problem might be with.
Space and time were considered to be separate and distinct concepts. With Einstein's special theory of relativity, in fact, it turns out that one can't really separate space and time, that they are intimately wrapped up in each other. And the amalgamation of the two is what physicists call space-time.
Einstein says the faster you move on the stage of life, the slower your clock beats. The faster you move, the flatter you become. Now, as bizarre as this may seem, this has been verified many times. Every time we send an astronaut into outer space, we're sending him into a time machine. Every time he comes back, he is a fraction of a second younger. So he has been hurled a fraction of a second forward in time. So if I can simply get an ordinary person, send him near the speed of light to the nearest star, I will literally send him into the future. So future time travel is already done. We do it every single day with our astronauts, every single day with our atom smashers. The trick is whether you can go backwards in time. That we don't know.
Several different theoretical physicists at different times have actually, on paper, described how to build time machines. What these machines are, the way they're characterized is that they use a massive amount of matter and energy. Some of them are the size of the universe. As far as I know, the various machines that people have developed do have the capability to be tuned, if you will, to a date where you'll end up with certain constraints. For example, all the machines have the restriction that you could not go back further than the moment at which the time machine was created. So for example, if I built a time machine today, I couldn't use it tomorrow to go back to yesterday. So if I made a time machine today, I couldn't go back to see the dinosaurs. If we somehow discovered a natural time machine, something that nature itself had created hundreds of millions of years ago, and there's some theoretical possibility to that, then we could use that to go back to, say, the age of the dinosaurs.
So we can see here that a living organic vehicle may be necessary to solve some of the theoretical problems that the theoretical physicists claim. Another connection with the use of cherub and cloud is the association of wings of the wind. The description of flying upon the wings of the wind gives one the idea of being caught up airbound like a bird in the wind hovering above the sky. However, there may be a far deeper meaning to this. Satan is described as the prince and power of the air. There is no further mention of these wings of the wind in the Bible, but in the Ethiopic version of the Book of Enoch, commonly called Enoch 1, quoted by Jude in the Bible, and at least reliable for the historical narration content, we get this description of the winds. In Enoch 18, 1-7, it says, "And I also beheld the four winds which bear up the earth and the firmament of heaven, and I beheld the four winds occupying the heights of heaven, arising in the midst of heaven and of the earth, and constituting the pillars of heaven. I saw the winds which turned the sky, which caused the orb of the sun and all of the stars to set. And over the earth I saw the winds, which support the clouds. I saw the path of the angels." This description is obviously not talking about earthly climatic conditions of wind. The most obvious description is that of gravity that holds and controls the movement of all things in the universe. But it is also supporting the clouds, not fluffy chunks of water vapor, but the heavenly clouds that are using gravity as a pathway for the angels. Later we will see this is exactly the technology used to imitate this organic heavenly process. The cherub is always mentioned as covering to protect. This is what keeps anything from getting spaghettified while traveling in a black hole or wormhole. This is actually alluded to and depicted in the Ark of the Covenant with the two cherub. This could be what many fringe scientists claim is an electromagnetic grid-like pattern of energy that covers the Earth. This was supposed to protect the Earth, which now keeps it locked into a linear time, but also serves as the pathway of the angels and defines how Lucifer, now Satan, is the prince and power of the air. Understanding the clouds of heaven in this manner also gives us a whole new meaning to one of the 5 I wills recorded in Isaiah 14, where Satan said in his heart, "I will rise above the heights of the clouds, I will be like the Most High." In other words, he would replace the object that once stood for the very presence of God, the living vehicle, to a nut and bolt UFO, robbing God of his real glory and his presence by his own replacement as an alien presence. In this, he gives mankind a false assumption that your eyes will be open and you will be like God, providing them with the same kind of technology. We are told that the coming of the Antichrist will be even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power, signs, and lying wonders. As quoted from Spiro Zahidist's commentary on this text, he quotes, "These two words do not refer to different classes of miracles, but to different qualities of the same miracle. Terrace, wonders, is a miracle regarded as a startling, imposing, frequently used elsewhere for strange appearances in the heavens. Simeon, sign, a miracle with an ethical end and purpose. They are valuable not so much for what they are, but for what they indicate." With this understanding, we can expect strange appearances from the skies bearing an ethical or moral message contrary to the Word of God. I don't know of any other twofold event that so accurately describes a sighting and contact from the skies than the typical UFO sightings and contacts of today. I hope you can see the importance of knowing what the clouds of heaven are and how they function. It is in this understanding from the Word of God alone that we are already have the answers that theoretical physicists contemplate. Now let's finish out the next 2 Samuel, which concludes and confirms all that has been said. Hebrew words, so you can stop the screen and copy the details for your own further study, but time constraints demand we push this through. Second Samuel 22:12 through 13 says, "And he makes darkness pavilions round about him, dark waters and thick clouds of the skies. Through the brightness before him were coals of fire kindled." Now this is my paraphrase, taking all of the variables and possibilities that can properly be used in this context and seeing from a 21st century perspective just exactly what this scripture could be telling us. And he made the deadly darkness his temporary entwined dwelling place, as a surrounding, as circular, around him. The stream binds together while the covered dense cloud smashes the elements before him to make an opening from heaven to earth. 2 Samuel 22:12 and 13. I hope in this video I have established a reasonable case that the Bible does explain the physics of time travel as being a truth, even to the extent of explaining almost all of the problems and complications of such a thing ever happening. As part of the secrets of heaven scattered. First, let's look at the non-canonical book of Enoch, called Enoch 1. This is the only book alleged to be written by Enoch that does not conflict with the Bible and is actually quoted by Jude. So for the historical narration, I do believe it can bring us an enhanced understanding of what the scriptures have to say also. In this we read that part of the judgment from Genesis 6 was not only the interbreeding of angelic hosts with humans, but there was a scattering of heavenly knowledge given to the pre-flood world. In Enoch 63:1 and 64:6 says, "These are the angels who have descended from heaven to earth, and have revealed secrets to the sons of men, and have seduced the sons of men to the commission of sin. A commandment has gone forth from the Lord against those that dwell on the earth, that their end may be, for they know every secret of the angels." Now this text says every secret, not some, not a little bit, but all, including time travel. Now the Bible also confirms this. Read Daniel 2:20-22. "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. He changeth the times and the seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. He reveals the deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him." Daniel is praising the Lord for giving him the answer to Nebuchadnezzar's dream. He then goes on to describe God's authority over all things. Included in this confirmation is that the years and appointed occasions in those years are also in God's hand. The same word here is, as occasions, is used in a prophetic passage commonly associated as one referring to the Antichrist. Whoever or whatever this guy is, it does talk about a certain man who would have the power given to him for a short period of time. Let's see the verse in Daniel 7:25. "And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time, times, and a dividing of times." Now my logical mind immediately says, wait a minute, how can the worst character in the world be the first to have this kind of technology without running rampant with it? I mean, what measure of control, what possible control can be given with such a crazy guy? When this came to me as a revelation, I thought it was nuts, so I can understand if you think so also. This was during a time of fasting and prayer, so that very day I was praying somewhat angry at God for being told this and crying out to him, saying, no one's ever going to believe this. How can I possibly convey this or say this to anyone? I don't know what you mean by this. I went to bed confused, frustrated, a little bit upset. A lot of bit upset. And that night, another 4 o'clock in the morning wake-up call from the Lord. He told me, Jim, you always wondered why I allowed evil to go so far. Yeah, I said, we all get our heads lopped off. The Antichrist stands in the temple declaring himself as God, demanding worship as God, yet not believing in any God except the God of power. So yeah, Lord, it looks like they won. Exactly, Jim, that is what I'm trying to tell you here. Look at 2 Thessalonians 2, 11 and 12. So I went and looked it up. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believeth not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. Then the Lord said to me, Jim, who is giving the strong delusion? Satan may have his end-time deception, but this is my delusion, not only for the people that reject me, but for Satan and his followers, both angelic and human. I am leaving them to their own lusts and desires, and the delusion has already gone into them. All I have done is created the outer packaging, but it is up to them how they interpret it. I have left them to their own devices, but I control it completely. Then he began to tell me the first time they were ever able to go anywhere in time, they came to that point of seeing their leader standing in the place as the winner. Because it is the future, they now have a complete blueprint or a recipe of what to do and what not to do to bring this scenario about as a reality. They have to stick to this in every little tiny detailed point, going all the way back to the fall in the Garden of Eden. They cannot deviate from it, and they know that they cannot travel beyond that point because somehow time ends also, as the Bible says in Revelation 13. They're locked into us. Even if they hear me now talking and explaining to this, they are still locked into this as their only hope in their delusion to think they can beat God at his own game. God is in complete control. Even the grandfather paradox is not a problem with God. That is why many things cannot be changed, and if you tried, you would only be a part of how it was supposed to happen in the first place. Even the theoretical physicists have considered this problem as already possibly. It is not nature that arranges this self-adjusting control for past time travel and the potential creation of a paradox. It is the sovereign power of the Lord our God and Creator, Savior, and loving Father that has permitted this intrusion by man through fallen angelic beings as part of his overall plan. As evil and out of control as it may appear to us, this is God's plan for us to be overcomers with the help of his Holy Spirit in us to be joint heirs and co-rulers with him forever as his children. So the secrets of heaven is given to mankind. Some of it was retained from Babel, encrypted in the various mystery spots all over the world. Today, many fringe scientists and researchers are just beginning to become aware of these truths, but confusing them as ancient aliens, as our creators and benefactors, and not the deceptive reality described in the Bible as the fallen angelic host duping mankind for their own agenda to bring a real hell on earth. As I am trying to show you from the scriptures, one man has already found this reality and has produced the technology to bring